Hey guys, so we're back finally. Welcome to my podcast. I am your host, Sleepy Celestial. We are back with episode 19 as well as episode 20. Now, today is going to be a special event for the podcast. We're talking about the before and after of the September 11th. Now, the crazy part about what I'm gonna tell you guys, there's a lot of stories and some reflecting. September 11th happened yesterday. I would say the anniversary. This is the 21 anniversary of the 9/11 incident that has happened in 2001. Now, I really wanted to come here and not only pay my respects, but at the same time, I wanted to make people understand that the world is very short and that it is important to definitely pay respect to the people, as well as the understanding that life will pass by, but at the same time the memories of the people that has passed away will live on. It's very important to show respect and to some of the toughest times. I think whenever time we're getting close to like September, and to see how it's always very gloomy, when we get to like September. So I will be sharing some of my I will share some experience that I had with the whole 9/11 incident. Even though I was so young, I still remember a lot of things that actually went down. At the same time, like I said, I am not only a student that studies in the world of architecture, but that was my first exposure to, I would say, buildings and design, because my first model was the World Trade Center itself. I always liked creating the small models of them because I find those buildings like very cool. So the fact that, flash forward now, I became an architect, studying for architecture, it doesn't change the fact how important and significant those buildings were, especially when these buildings were still there. So I'm gonna give you guys a brief history for anybody that don't know about the World Trade Center, what they do, and what those buildings actually represented. So the buildings itself were basically 110 story each, but these buildings also shares neighboring buildings such as World Trade Center 3, which was a Marriott hotel. You also had a building 4, 5, and 6, as well as 7 World Trade Center, and together made up the World Trade Center complex. Now, the most beautiful thing about the World Trade Center is the trade centers, especially the original one. It was designed by, um, definitely designed by a architect that, funny thing, was afraid of heights, but at the same time, his name is no Masaki. I think it's Masaki Emoto, and he was the architect that was responsible in designing the World Trade Center. Now, the reason why Moroyu Yamasaki. There's his name. So the reason why he designed the World Trade Center the way it did, the World Trade Center also represent like a bamboo stick structure, which means that the building somewhat is kind of hollow because the floor and all the strength of the building is withheld by 110 core. It's more of like a sheet panel walls, as well as the building's outside layer is what keeps the whole strength of the building. They have all these gigantic H beams on the building where the cover of the building was like a gridded pattern. The cool thing is that you had like these gigantic arch um, feet, you know, Gothic arch feet of the building. The buildings were 200 by 200 acres, and basically was an acre sized building. The length of the building from head to toe and how strong it was, especially it was two of them. They were built in 1973, and that was when New York was still planning on like designing things and how to come up with an idea of a trade, you know. So me reading all these things about the buildings and what the building came to be now and how the building came to be after, you know, it's pretty amazing. So yeah, even in like TV shows and like animation, like back in the early 60s, 70s, or 80s, we always saw like the World Trade Center as a very prominent figure in the skyline. You know, even on like comic books or um, it was a pretty significant part of capitalism and how the buildings signify America, and people that didn't take the building's importance over time as things started unfolding and as we got to like how 9/11 became such a big thing over the years. Even though I've been seeing online that a lot of people are saying that, you know, it's been 21 years, it's not fully helping you, or, you know, the building is not really affecting you at some sort. Even though if you were not even a victim of 9/11, still understand that the world is still going through so much right now. You know, even parents now are not safe to even send their kids to school due to the fact of mass shooting or all these crazy important things that's been happening around the world. Um, this podcast, like I said, is very explicit, so it may not be for kids because, you know, some things may trigger people. That's why I make sure that I put that on the live tonight, because there will be things that we're gonna be talking about that, you know, it may sound very uncomfortable, but I'm gonna make sure it's the least uncomfortable, because those things, you know, that's something I would never expect myself to sit there and talk about, but I think it's very prominent for this type of episodes that we talk about that, remembering how it was, how it develops, and how important it is to still remember, even though you're not fully affected by it now, you still got to understand that there'll be a day, any of us that don't have kids or will have kids in the future, as a parent, as a husband, as a wife, or as anyone that you have significant in your life that you love, you will understand that this is gonna be a day-to-day thing for you. Like, you're still gonna remember, you know, living the same trauma even though it's been so long. You know, I think it's always important to talk about these things because, you know, I don't think people understand the magnitude, even though you're not, even if let's say you're not from the country or you're not from here, you'll understand how the impact culturally, physically, mentally, like all these emotions affected you at some point. um I think that a lot of people just misunderstood the situation of how important this day was to not only Americans but as well as people around the world, because ever since what happened, the world has changed globally and very effectively too. So I'm gonna start to give you guys small details of my story and how I end up getting introduced to 9/11, and how from 9/11 now back then to now how I see 9/11 in a adult standpoint. I think that growing up, you know, I grew up from the Caribbeans, from Haiti, and my grandma was the first person that was here. So it was very important for her to, give us visas and stuff like that. So eventually, we came here to the US. And the cool part was that, even on like some TV shows, we were looking at like New York and everything, and how beautiful it was, and how ever since as a kid, I'm like, I would love to go visit New York and see the trade towers, which is kind of sad because it's like, as a kid, I always liked the designs of the buildings, and it's sad that I never got the chance to even go up to the buildings, the original ones. But with time, it's sad, but at the same, with time, I kind of understand that 9/11 should not be a day-to-day thing, which I know that a lot of people, even if, like I said, if you're not victimized, you will not have that sensitive understanding that those are your people or your friends or family that has died. And even some kids now that never got the chance to even um, meet their parents, it was just growing up without a dad or a mom, and you never got that parent to child connection. You will never understand how that feels. So people that are now on social media or even on certain platforms, I understand that certain things may not sound, it's like somebody saying that, it's been 14, how many years, and, you should get over like everything that's like racism and everything. Like, believe it or not, there will still be all these things in your life that you may not able to control, but at the same time, you have to live your life, because life is to be celebrated, not to be put people down. But if you're a person that your main job is to like, put people down or stuff like that, sometimes it's not the best time to aggravate things, especially if it's like a unwounded, wound, because it's just gonna get worse instead of like healing or trying to help people get better. So definitely, like I said, back to the story. I When we first came to the US, and my parents, we my dad was showing us around, and I remember the first night we landed to the US, it was very chilly. It was, I think, 2000, and it was in August 11th, or it was between August 11th, because right now, flash forwarding, is like 20, I think it's like 15 or something years now since we've been in the US, 22 something years. So to see now, from we started like going to school, and you know and the professors or the teachers like started teaching us math, and it's like, as we like started learning like English and all that stuff, and it was very cool, getting to the system, and has just me being like a typical kid, to see myself going to class. I was like, I think in the third grade or fourth grade. I'm not remembering right, but I know that when I came in, I was like around like 5 or 6 years old. So the crazy thing, and I still have that photographic memory of how everything went down that day. It's pretty crazy because my dad, I think on the 9th or on the 8th, because we came like on the 8th or the 9th of September. And the fact that we went back to Haiti, and my dad was like, he was still trying to fix certain things around, and decided like in 2001 or so we came back. So we still started like in the process of like going to school and everything. And I remember a couple of days, things just started feeling like, when you have a when things are gonna get bad, but it's very it's a very beautiful day, but at the same time, the next following day might get even worse, and you just didn't really know that. That was the feeling that I got. Um, from the moment we went to class or anything, that was like on the eighth or ninth. As a kid, you don't know anything as much. You just following what you're being told or anything. And one of my teachers, um, I graduated. Well, yeah. So the school that I finished was, I think, Fourth Avenue. That was like in New Jersey, East Orange, and we just started like playing. And then over time, my dad got the place apartment. As kids, we were like very happy running around the whole apartment and stuff. And I still remember the whole thing because my grandma, my late grandma, sadly she passed away in 2004 or 3. And her that opens the door for a family to come to the US. I remember vividly the night that the whole 9/11 thing happened, like 2 or 3 days after 9/11, how shaken she was. She told my dad, and she shake her head like, oh my gosh, like all that has happened. And we actually had like a family member that went with my dad to pick up like some dishes, because she used to shop over there a lot. And she picked up like some like plates and everything for like our new place when we were coming in. And the fact that they came like 2 days, she came like 2 days before 9/11 to like the World Trade Center and got some of the appliance and stuff like that. And ever since that day, she never hang up that portrait of the World Trade Center. Like she took a picture where she's standing in front of the Trade Center plazas, and ever since then she never put like that picture back up again. Sometimes, you know, PTSD could hit you different, especially psychologically, especially seeing something where you just came from something 2 days ago, and to see this entire thing gone, it leaves a shock in you that you would never understand. And it's like losing something that's invaluable, but eventually each time you remember it, it's gonna get worse, and nothing's gonna be able to think differently, especially for that. Um but yeah, so after we got the dishes and we started like applying things for school, we still started like learning things and stuff like that. And the I think on the 9th or the 10th, we had like a small little walk around, because the school where I was, in the back of the school, when you like at, I think, the fourth floor or the fifth floor, you could see almost the entire timeline of New York. Like you could see it, and it's very vividly. You could actually see, because it's like the part of the school, I guess, because we have like a long hill where the school sits, is almost like a hill, and you could see the skyline in the back. So if you walked in the back of the building, you could have seen everything that was going on. And the fact that what happened was that like we went over there and we got I remember the teacher was like, called out my dad, because I thought, any kid, like, you would think like, something did you do. And um my parents was like, my dad especially was like, no, you didn't do anything wrong. Like they called my dad in like main office to come pick up. They told all the parents to like pick up like our kids and stuff like that. Because at first we had like a fire drill, I think on the 8th or the 9th. or the 10th, if I'm not mistaken. You know, the teachers and the principal, her name was Miss Vincent, and she was telling us like, everybody be quiet, just, we're gonna practice this. It's like, when everybody just start feeling something heavy like on their chest, but you just don't know what it is. But when you pay attention to your gut and explain like what you were thinking, and then when you see what you've been thinking and what your heart been reacting to means the same thing, that's exactly how it was. Everybody just started asking like, what's going on, and then boom, out of nowhere, next day, especially bright early, because our classes used to start like at 8:30, so by the time we get to school, it's like around 8. So my dad had us ready on the 11th, and had our clothes, because my dad used to work like what, 3 jobs. So he was rushing us, to get clothes on, take a shower, and then leave out. So when we got to like school, we started like regular activities. The first thing we used to do on like regular activities when we're in like, pre-K and stuff, is that they told us like, you know, every morning they sing like the alma mater, and then we recite the national, you know, the republic for which we stand. Those things as we kids, they told us how to the pledge allegiance to the flag, stuff like that. So we did that, and then we got right into like our routines, like studying and reading like the ABCs and stuff like that. So as we just started our morning regularly, it didn't feel too strange. It just felt like, okay, this is another day in school that we're just gonna enjoy. Then I think like around, I think it was like around 9, or probably around, yeah, probably around 9:25, or going to like to 9:30, and then from 9:30 to like 10, we just started. At first they told everybody like to stay in their rooms, because we practiced the fire drill a couple of days before. But then now they put that in the intercom that all professors lock their doors, make sure that the doors are locked. um we're gonna practice a more serious version of the fire drill. After that finish happened, like around like 10 or 9:30, like I said, then they said that, okay, we're out. Everybody, we're gonna have they say we're gonna have lunch early, and then from lunch early we may have a half a day. And so we're gonna start calling the parents of each student, so they could come down to come pick them up in the main office. That's exactly what the principal said when I was as things started developing. And then I was like, okay, what's going on? And I had my other 2 siblings with us. Like, we were all three was in different homerooms. um and then they started calling each kid one by one, and so there was like a lineup of kids in the hallway waiting for their parents. And some of them were crying because they didn't know what's going on. So eventually you start seeing parents coming, and they're like hugging their kids like very tightly. And you know from then on, um my dad came by, and at first, as because I'm the littlest, I started crying because I'm like, I didn't know what was going on. And I started telling my dad, I'm like, I didn't do anything. And he was like, you didn't. He was like, that's not nothing's. There's nothing's wrong. Nobody's gonna do anything. He just told me like, we're heading home. I'll explain everything to you. Though, so we were very little, so we didn't know what was going on. So he just picked us up. Um, the first thing he did, he was like, "Did you guys eat?" And we was like, "Yes." Like, we had like a half a day, and we got like some graham crackers and some extra little snacks. So we got there, and we started driving home. And it was my probably my first time my dad, I saw him cried in the car coming back. picking us up, and then as we driving midway, he started like slightly crying. And then he like literally started crying. He was like he had to leave work because he felt like panic because with everything that was going on in the morning of the whole event, he didn't even want to open the TV quite yet and just explain to us like, we just came to this country, tried to, make a better living for ourselves because we're like the youngest pair of the family. So there's like older pairs of us. So to see all that was being done around the world, like was being televised, and we're like the last people to know about it. And then my dad opened up, was like, this morning he had to work, and the first thing he heard was that one of the family members called, was like, turn on your TV, this is what's going on. And he was just, and that was, I tell people this all the time, that was when like cell phones were not like strong, like the cell phones that we have now and the things that people had back then, it was way different. Like, you remember those gigantic phones, and it's like a a talkie walkie, like you speak back and they speak back. That's what the school had, and that's what we had, where the only type of phones that they have was like those office phones. So it was, you looking at 2001 as a year where it's still part of like the early um 80s or 90s, like late 90s. It felt like late 90s for us, you know. And this it was very eerie that day, because like how everything like started turning and developing. And the crazy thing is that we saw, everything. And like I told you, like it's when we started turning around, because I think I forgot, my sister left something back at the school. So as we couldn't come in the front of the school, so we had to go in the back. And that's when we saw the buildings. And we saw like one of them had like a smoke on going out. And from where we were, we could see the entire smoke of the buildings. It's like if you go to, like, I forgot what place in New Jersey, maybe probably like the New Central High School in New Jersey, you could see literally New York from the timeline. There's a part of New Jersey where it's not in Jersey City, but like in like even like in Newark, you could see part of the skyline of the buildings. So if the Twin Towers were there, you could have like honestly see them. So the fact that we could see the smoke and everything from our point, it was even more scarier and more evident that there's a lot of crap going on, and you don't know what's going on as a kid. So things are just developing by itself as it started. And you know, my dad just, like I said, hugged us tight and said that, whatever that's going on around the world right now, we're gonna pray, we're gonna go home. And he said like my grandma, she did some food, but she didn't want to eat, because like I said, my late grandma, she worked throughout her entire, I would say 50s and 80s, and all the way up to like when she almost like retired, and like mid or early 90s or 2000, that's when she like retired from work. So she was even more shocked that what was going on in the TV. um like I said, even though we didn't have like family members that has worked in the buildings, um it was still like, how did this happen? And and I always tell people this wherever I go, for the longest, I don't think I was gonna go for architecture. I actually wanted to be a scientist, which is kind of funny because my dad still has a picture of me holding, those things that we used to have like as a kid, like those science board where you could create like either a mountain of lava, and all these creative things. Like, I always wanted to go for scientist, and the fact that the type of scientist I became was not actually a scientist. But if you think of an architect, you still like di- you know dissecting something and creating something new out of it to build like buildings and to analyze things, right? So the fact that that happened, and it was even a shocker to a lot of people in my family, and to see how the world has changed from 9/11 standpoint, and flash forwarding 2 or 5 years later, when my like teachers like 2004, 2003, as things started like really prolonging, we started seeing the difference of how the world has become. So it was like 9/11 kind of like robbed the childhood out of a lot of it, robbed the innocence out of a lot of places in the world. And ever since then, 9/11 not only culturally and effectively hurt other people, but other groups were being seen differently around the world. So when people be telling people get over things, you have to understand that this event not only shaped the way we see other people, but at the same time we started racially or profiling people that had nothing to do with certain things. So that's even another dangerous thing as well. Like when you start misadding or you mismatch adding, different people to fit the narrative that you want, I think that becomes a dangerous thing. Um, so yeah, even though the whole event happened, is still being affected today. We may not see it at the magnitude that it happened, but eventually it became a phenomenon. It became a culture movement of how things are and how people are being transported around the world, or how people are traveling, or how things are being transported to the US or any other places around the world. So, yeah, 9/11 is the same as the magnitude of how, what we're dealing with now, where, social distancing. At first, when this whole thing got broke out, we couldn't sit with people that we love. It felt just like this because it was like, how can't you sit somewhere and not look around to see what's gonna happen? And if you think about the whole control gun laws and everything, normally I don't go political on this channel, but today is a day that I think it doesn't just represent one thing, it represents multiple. How do they put this? A butterfly effect. That's literally how I could picture 9/11. Like things that were comfortable and common to some people now have become strangers. And I think that plays a big role in how we see the world today, is the trust, the loyalty, the impact, and how we carry our daily lives has changed. And not only 9/11 opened our eyes to how the world was going to be portrayed, but at the same time, since 9/11, the world has lost its innocence to a point where, you know, things were getting even worse, but it was getting slightly better. But 9/11 became even a more block of craziness, from segregation to everything to 9/11 to so many different events that has happened in history. And the fact that in history, if you don't, like the title says, to understand your past, you must read the past to understand the future, indicating that if you cannot learn how to move on without hurting other people, but at the same time learning from those mistakes, then you would understand that the magnitude of what happened still affects more people. It doesn't matter if you're in a building, or who's not paying attention to what. Now we have to like be more careful of our surroundings, but at the same time how to really integrate those things into our daily lives. So as the story prolongs, we saw that, things started changing. Like when we went back to like my country, the securities were even more tighter, and it was less easier to like actually get in. Um, I remember like they didn't care if you had like less things on, you had to take everything off. Like the procedure at the airport gotten more strict. And I remember how everything started like changing over the years. And that's why I tell people like 9/11 didn't just affect the way we think about things. It affects us in a mental where whatever we see on the bus, train, or anything, we panic because that's the main thing that comes up. Is like, what if this happened? What is it? Because we start creating scenarios, and those scenarios start becoming a reality. Um, so if you look at everything that has happened, so from the Boston Marathon incident, from the Uvalde incident, from all these other incidents, even though it's not, considered as an attack of magnitudes, but it still creates a perspective of all these things, you know. Um, but when we started getting to like high school or um even middle school, every year when that 9/11 incident ceremony happens, it's a different outlook on life, especially people that grew up after 9/11 that don't know nothing about how the day went out or how the day even started. It's even worse. And then when we started seeing things on TV and they started passing, and I remember the first thing they had in the newspaper was the other building being engulfed in flames. And it was under I think Star, because I remember my dad used to do a newspaper. Part of his other job was that. So the first page that we used to get, like, we used to get like the newspapers for free. So when we got that, the first thing that was on the cover was the Twin Towers, and how engulfed they were. I remember every morning when we head to school, they had like this sad music that was playing, and every time they have the song playing, they're basically talking about what happened, and they still try to find people. And some people couldn't be found due to the incident. And it was very stressful, it was very sad. I remember, like I said, we had like victims that came to our school and was talking to us about the whole incident. One of the victims were talking to us and saying that, if it wasn't for one of her friends, she actually went down to like one of the building lobbies to get like a coffee, because I guess one of the coffee machines did not work. So she decided to come down to like really, get something. So by the time she was trying to go back up, it's like something was telling her like, I think she dropped something or something spilled on her. So she went to like the dryer of the there's like they had like, I'm gonna explain more into that to tell you how the magnitude of those buildings and all these things that the building had in them. But let me continue with the story. So as she started explaining to us, we're still in high school, so we were still young. So how she was talking to us, she said that she came back down, got what she needs, and something spilled on her clothes. And she said, if it wasn't for like when something is giving you a sign, and you have to go for it to make it become a thing. She was like, if she didn't turn around to go to the south side of, I think she was in the Marriott Hotel, to go back in the original building. I think she was in building 2. And she was like, something told her like stay in that main floor. I think she was like in the 20th floor. And she said, yeah, she's gonna head back down. If she would have went back up, because she told us that she worked at the 72 floor. So if you think about the impact of everything that has happened, especially how the angle, how the plane and everything, how each angle of the plane hit the building and everything was destroyed by a certain amount of floors. So when she started explaining to us, she said that things that she wanted to say or talk about, she couldn't say it because it's so, you know, the PTSD came out of her and just started making her reminisce of how crazy the day was. You know, she said there's things that if you see them as a human being, you might just be thinking like, are these actually human? Or that she didn't know what she was looking at after what she have saw. Because by the time she got out the building, walking outside on the plaza, she said that it was like tomato. It's like tomatoes. You have people that are coming off the building, and you know how it was very explicit the way she explained it. She said that she didn't want to scare us, but she wanted to let people know that was the hard truth. You know, she said that there was buildings that was to the side. It was getting like some of like burn and stuff like that, but the building shakes before anything else because of the impact. And you know, all those fuels and everything went inside the core of the buildings. So, you know, there was a lot of chaos. It was a lot of chaos. And I think based on her experience and how she was explaining, you know, if she wasn't there at the right time, she would have been one of those victims that we was gonna be, you know, reading about. So for the survivors, for the people that have survived and could live on to talk about it, they could still, you know, even if now you're in a different building, that's still gonna become your mindset. It's like, is this gonna happen again? Or is, you know, yours gonna be like, what if? You know, that's something that even as a veteran, if you are a veteran, you go to war and you will still be reminiscing. Anytime you hear a sound that sounds like something from war, you will still feel like, you know, remembering that, and that may affect you in some level. That, you know, that's basically how it felt. Like you felt like you just came from war, and you know, you can't really hear the sound of like certain music or certain sound because it triggers so much. um but yeah, so ever since what happened, you know, every school year we, you know, we do the pledge allegiance and we sing the somebody sing the national anthem and the pledge allegiance. And you know, every year we remember that, so we sit like in the front of our TVs and just remember that day so vividly, you know. And I always tell people like, when you look at the buildings, like you be like, how did they even manage to build those buildings? Because even from far away, how tall they were and how you could see them so prominently, it it had this sense of eeriness. Because I remember like we were supposed to like follow up to like a field trip like in 2000, I think 4 or 5, but my dad was like he didn't want us to go out to certain places because you know, as parents, like you become safety becomes your first priority. um it was devastating to like after effect. And growing up now, if I flash forward, and you know, when to see things now and then back then, because when we got home, so I'm flash forwarding back to childhood again. So when we got home and my dad was like, you know, this is what happened. And you know, some of us, well, especially me, I started crying, you know. And I told him like, you know, or anything that's gonna happen to us, and he was like, no, everything's gonna be fine. Hopefully the president knows what to do. And it's crazy, like when I started hearing what was happening over there, and how, you know, New York was not just one of the main places. You had different places that were being attacked as well. So everything was being attacked at once. So it felt like this sense of dread and sadness and like panic. It was like you just came like a year or 2 years ago in this country, and all this is happening. So it felt like unsafe. And ever since, like I said, ever since then, we as a people or anybody around the world started seeing life a bit differently. Um, like I said, it was one of those moments where you was like, you don't want to remember certain things, but it's like you have to. It's a I would say it's an obligation. It's just like the same for an obligation from what's going on now, where due to the whole pandemic, we will celebrate and respect those people that has passed, and to understand that I don't think people just wanted to like deserve to like go away. How could you know something were to happen? Like, if you're not like the creator, you would not know anything about your future. You could only pray and carry your life positively. you know Other than that, there's nothing I don't think a human soul or a human could do to invade something where when something, especially if it's not preordained or developed. Like, faith sometimes will happen when it needs to happen to open up, right? Sometimes faith will sacrifice things in order for something new to be created out of it. Um but it was an experience, because that night, 2 days before, my grandma did a chocolate, like a Haitian type of chocolate, and she had like those little chairs where she was sitting down. She was just shaking her head like, how could all this happen? Like, my grandma started crying, and she touched each of our heads as kids. She was like, this is why she prayed on our heads so many times, because you never know when you might come back to school or work or anything. So I always tell people, like, if you're leaving out your house, always pray. It doesn't matter what you pray to, just make sure that whatever thing that you have faith in, pray for your safe journey to work, school, or wherever you're going in life, and come back, because um from everything that has been happening, life is not guaranteed to you. You could only be pray or be happy that the important things matters in this world, and you're able to live by your faith and not by just your sight. Sometimes that's an important thing too. um but yeah, she felt very bad, and from the moment she saw that, she said, when you guys go to school, I'm gonna go pick you guys up and come back. So my grandma used to walk from home all the way up to pick us up, and hold all three of us like by her hand to walk with us. That means so much to me now, knowing the protection that she had over us. Both of my grandmas actually. It brings a perspective. So a couple of weeks ago, I made like a whole plan, especially last year was the 20th anniversary of the September 11th. I decided to build like a whole model, which you guys could actually find on one of my YouTube channel videos, where I designed the past World Trade Center as well as the new one. So before I continue to talk about what I did for this year that's different to last year's ceremony, I definitely wanted to also say that after everything that has happened in the 9/11 thing, I remember they started making like some predictions of how to clean the site. And it was sad, like watching like documentaries and everything about it, but I've learned so much for what happened that day, Pentagon and all these other places that were destroyed. So it was very, to take all the, I remember, I forgot his name, but he used to have like a TV show or a podcast host. He's one of those American Got Talent. I think it's Howard Stern. The I I don't know. I forgot his name, but I remember he did a whole podcast with Still Stand This Day, where he covered the entire incident as the 9/11 thing went. And if you even look at the symbol of the World Trade Center, remember the Warner Brothers channel, W11. W11 used to look like the Twin Towers. Like if you look at the channel logo, it used to have like the twin 11s, and it had like the W11, the Warner Brothers channel. That was channel 11, where they used to, if you look about the reminiscing part of this episode, I remember way before 9/11, even like Batman Beyond TV shows and all these other TV shows had like the Trade Center is very prominent in the background. And to show how much 9/11 changed things, I remember the first movie that um I think my brother really wanted to go see was Spider-Man, like the very first Spider-Man movie. Tobey Maguire played in it. Now, when that movie was about to be released, I think it was supposed to be released in 2001, and we had like the cereal box, right? So to show how much reminisce it was, they had the cereal box, and the side of the on the side of Spider-Man's eye, you could have seen the Twin Towers, and even in the commercials, you saw that there was a helicopter and it was stuck between the Twin Towers. So ever since what happened, they basically changed the entire cereal boxes where they just put the Empire State instead of the Twin Towers. So it was kind of sad that, for this building, how iconic they were, and how very little years that passed that people don't know that much about them and how they were created. Another thing that the World Trade Center did was not only create landfill, but create an area where there's a busing area of transportation, mall activities. So another thing, so I'm gonna get a bit architectural on you guys. So the Trade Center is a 16-acre site. What I'm not sure if they increased the site by now because they're still adding more buildings. But it originally was a 16-acre site, and inside of the site basically held the seven tower buildings at the World Trade Center. But the tallest prominent ones were Tower 1 and 2, and then you also had the hotel that sits between those twin towers. You also had the Tower 7, which was the front building that when you look in the downtown Manhattan of New York, when the towers used to stand like this, like one is in the front, the other one's in the back, but when you look at them, they look like they're equal, right? When you used to look at them like from the downtown Manhattan standpoint, looking on the Empire State Building, you would just see like these twin tall buildings like in the background like this, you know. They change all these things, and from then on what happened and how the impact, like I said, the way that the buildings came down, it was insane. And it's crazy that still this day they didn't take out all the rest of the debris. They actually created more concrete part, because the thing was the buildings were created like in a bathtub type shape, like the site, because it goes down 70 feet. And then on top of that 70 feet, you had like 16 parking lots. And then you had the World Trade Center train. And then you had the mall. And then you had the Twin Towers and all the other buildings. Another prominent thing that about the Trade Center complex was that this was not the first time something happened to the building. When I started reading things in school, I heard that in February there was another attack, but that was like in the 1993. Somebody attacked the building in the bottom, and from then on, all the way up to 2001, the gap between those things were at least what, one, three, five. So at least 5 or 7 years later, the buildings got hit again. So it's kind of sad to see that. Strike me once, shame on me, or strike me once, that's your fault. Strike me 2 times, is shame on everything. So it was kind of like that. Um, but these buildings, like I say, another crazy factor is that they have to sway, because the building had to sway at like at least 25 or 26 feet degrees, because the building were like very straight blocks, hollow tubes, which means they could actually sway slightly, you know, because they had like these little brackets in between that the wind turbines like goes right through, so that way the building could stay straight. And it's also one of the buildings that are responsible for like the structurally elevator sequence, which means in each floor or each level of the building has like a lobby, and those lobbies are like sky lobbies. So instead of going straight down to relax, there's parts of the building that requires certain levels of lobbies. So it's like the building is cut down to like 3 sections, you know. And together you have like 2 or 4 main elevators that goes, I think it was 10, but they go straight to the all the way up. And one of the building had like an observation deck, whereas the other one did not. Um, but yeah, like to see those things like in movies like Home Alone 2 or Home Alone 1, um, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. You know, there was also good things on, you know, that day, that we as people started coming together somewhat to get things, like especially people that's like New Yorkers, to see how they were reacting and helping each other out that day. Um, it shows the resilience of why they built, better and bigger. It was very important for things like that to be done. And it was something that I think a lot of people should give respect and courage to, like the first responders and everyone that sacrificed their lives for things like this, to have some sort of normalcy and survival for the amount of people that has survived in those buildings. So nearly almost 6,000 or 3,000 people has perished due to the event. But in return, to make the buildings more safer, a lot of things did change after 9/11, like the strictness of the building codes, as well as the way that they put up skyscrapers around the world was completely different. I remember when I was reading like another documentary again, where they were giving, like, it was in, I think the title is called Magnificent or Marvin Marvels. um it's like mega construction. It was like on the Science Channel, and they were giving us like the layout, how the World Trade Center was operated, and how the new World Trade Center, how it became more prominent, and how beautiful, and but also resilience. Because there's things that are like hidden mechanisms that they won't tell you as architects, that they put in the building in case to safety. So it was pretty cool to see all that being done for this building, for this new era of World Trade Center that came along. So when 2021 hit last year, it marked the 20 years since the incident, and it was kind of eerie because the way that the day hit on the September 11th of last year, it felt like the same day, the same blue, pure blue sky. There was like no cloud in sight. Like it felt like exactly that autumn type of feeling, fall. Um, so it had a bit of an eeriness to it, and with everything that happened last year, and how we're still recovering from the pandemic and all the crisis that's going on, it felt very eerie to see that beautiful clear day last year. So what changed this year from the experience for the 9/11 thing was that I decided to go to New York on the 10th. So that was a day before they did the ceremony yesterday. So I always have a 3 day grieving, I would say, for my 9/11 experience, and how to get to like know people and understanding that how important the day was for a lot of people. Some people were just starting off their business at the building. Some people were just starting off a life and getting a new job, starting that new career. So a lot of things was cut short for a lot of people. So that also pays respect to the victims and for people that are still living now with this trauma. So this year I decided to go to New York. I went to New York. The last time I've been to New York, that was a crazy thing. That was back in 2013 when they were still building the World Trade Center still. Um, I remember the World Trade Center, one World Trade Center was completed in 2013. That's when they started putting like the spire, as well as they started arguing between the One World Trade Center as well as the Willis Tower, um, which one was the tallest. So the Sears Tower, aka the Chicago Tower, and the One World Trade Center, there's something in architecture where if the building spire is counted, that means that that's the full length of the building. But if the building is an antenna, that means the roof of the building is counted, but not the antennas, which means the parapet roof of the building doesn't match or count, which means the part where the floors or somewhat of the stairs of the roof meets, that's count as the building. So after they made that whole debate of if the One World Trade Center is the tallest in the world of, well, the highest in the Western Hemisphere, or the will. So when it came to conclusion, the One World Trade Center won. So which means New York ended up getting the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere versus Chicago. So it beats the Willis Tower by 583 feet, which means the building now became 1776, which is a significant mark for the US because that's also their independence. So it was very, I remember all that when I was watching in 2013, and I was also, seeing when they started putting the spire on top of the One World Trade. So when I saw how they started rebuilding back, the first thing they did back in 2002 or 2003, they started cleaning the site, the whole bathtub. And that, like I told you guys, there's things that they couldn't take out due to the importanceness of the walls of the basement of the building, because it was actually holding on to water as well as some landfill that was cracked down. So there was a lot that has happened for the new buildings to rise. you know it was a lot that was there, so they wanted to replace all these things back. um it's very surreal to see the building standing now, but I think it was needed for those buildings to be rebuilt because of the importanceness of New York, I would say. And like I said, when I went over there on the 10th of September of this year, I saw some important. Like I said, I am planning on working on some major project, which will include some of the pictures as well as some of the audio of me going to the New York site, and to give some of my experiences and interaction with people that I have met and that had managed to subscribe to the channel. So it felt so good to me to see people open up and talk about their differences and to talk about their experiences that day. Um, that is a topic I think a lot of people don't really sit there and talk about, and the culture impact as the event had, and how it's still being vibrated still this day. So when I went there, to see the buildings, The first building I got out of was the World Trade Center station, which is now called the Oculus slash transportation hub. Now that building is a very beautiful building. It has this organic, but it's supposed to be a representation of a freedom dove. The architect that designed it is Santiago Calatrava. um it was very it was very beautiful to see that, and to see the downtown area be rebuilt. It's actually rebuilt better than ever, I would say. Because I didn't get the chance to see the buildings when the original one was there, I had the courage to go over there on the 10th. And I think it meant a lot to me because I'm studying a field where it requires me to study buildings and to design buildings. I think it was very important to go back to the birthplace where that maybe became an architect in the first place. It felt so surreal to see those buildings. Like, to see them in the books, it means okay, but to actually see the buildings in real life, it's actually very ginormous. Like, just one building is almost like 2 or 4 blocks, and it's huge. Like, the site is huge. The buildings are ginormous. It goes to show how important a civil engineer, electrical, all the people that has put in those buildings up. It felt I felt proud picking the field that I decided, because I think with my thought process and the careness of dealing with people and understanding the magnitudes of safety when it comes to my field, I think it was very privileged for me to even be at the site. Um, so when I went there, it was like around like 6 o'clock. Caught the train, and a couple of like 30 or 20 minutes, I was in New York. It felt very beautiful. I like that they created like a whole area where people could relax on the transportation hub. So the transportation hub is not only creating the the Oculus, but it's also creating sitting area on the side of the curved dome. It's very surreal. It has like this light heavenly marbles structure. It's very pale white. It's like something that's just drop off out of heaven or wherever alien world it came from. This is what it felt like. When you go inside of it, it's actually very beautiful, and it it looks almost like an eye on some point, but I think the detail of the story was that they wanted the building to have that arc where you could slightly thinly see the side of the one world trade, to see how important the buildings are. Is when you get out the hub, you see how the magnitude of the trade center hits you, like oh crap, like I'm standing right next to the one the World Trade Center. Like, over time I feel as if the site itself becomes like a celebrity, and the celebrity is the World Trade Center site, because how important the people are seeing those buildings now, and how beautiful people see New York, especially downtown Manhattan. And what was there is back, but it's better. So I really recorded so many different things, which I will share with you guys and the upcoming projects. Um, it was so cool to see people interacting with the building space, and the buildings interacting back with people, and that's something you don't see too often. um, when you see art, and art becomes like a sculpture, and it becomes like an interactions with not only people, but it's interacting with people and animal, and the building is doing all that without having a consciousness or a breathing light. Like, we're the one that's giving it life by walking in and out. The space between it is very interesting to think like that now, seeing designing things for myself and seeing how I'm gonna design things in the future. It gives you that understanding, like, okay, so this is what I need to do. And I think the architects, the people that are responsible to build the buildings, I think they did their job so well, because when I sat there and got to like the abstinence space, which is the Worcester Center Memorial Pools, um, I don't think it made me cry, but I think it made me understand. Okay, I understand the message that they were trying to put in. Like the pools has names of the people surrounding the entire pools. It's probably one of the largest pools that I have seen, like in a square footage, because it's supposed to be representation of the buildings itself. It also gave me an understanding, like the names when it started getting dark, it was so cool to see the names light up, and the bottom pool lights up, and it gives you like, from this during the day, from this shallow sadness where all you could hear is the rainy sound of the pools like going in and out, versus when you're actually looking at the pools outwards and see how beautiful it is at night, and how the pools, especially the tower, one pool is facing One World Trade, and where One World Trade is where Tower 6 used to be. So it's more of the east side now, reflecting on the pool, and adjacent angle from the left. So it was a very beautiful feeling. So I don't think I would never think of seeing the New York standpoint at that angle. Because I would say I have a different eye mindset now from an architect standpoint, see what the detail and understanding how they were planning to do this. But yeah, good or bad, like I said, 9/11 has affected me at a point where all I can do is worry about safety, and also it's a day for me to not only remember, even though if I didn't have anybody in those buildings, it's a day of remembering for me, because this is how my journey as an architect started. And ever since that day, I made a oath that I want to design something that's going to be everlasting, because I think by seeing how those buildings came down and the tragedy that it brought for families, and some families, I remember there was giving a HBO special, and this boy, his mom passed, but they didn't tell that boy like 3 or 4 days later, because every time he asked for the mom, because I remember he was playing like with this like Superman toy, and he called his mom like Wonder Woman. And when the dad finally sat there and explained to the kid of that his mom is not coming back, it hit very hard, because the kid really sat there and like cried and cried, and the dad cried with him. He lost his mom and he lost his wife, and they was married for, I think, for 22 years. They were like young, but they married for like a long time. And it felt so sad, because it's like, it doesn't matter if you're a man or woman or even a kid, you're gonna feel something, especially if you've been with someone for so many years, and to see that person gone without, saying goodbye or anything. That's why I say impression on people is a very important tool. Um, this could be the last time you see someone. So best way to leave a good expression is to reach out to people more, understand where they've been, and trying to connect to people. I know every life is not perfect. We all gonna have distractions, but make sure that the distraction doesn't affect what actually matters, which is like your friends and family, and the people you care about, because those things are more important than money. And you as a person will know you will not trade these things for the world. um but yeah, it 9/11 changed me in so many ways. It has taught me so many things as well. So I've done so many projects over the years, and I think um I'm still in the journey to become an architect because I'm actually going for my bachelor's and master's. But to see 21 years go by, and I still remember vividly how it happened, and all the, I'm not gonna cover all the horrible things that I think people told me and experienced, because I think it's already enough for people to relive that, but at the same time to remember the bad parts. It's always good to remember some good things that survivors will talk about, so I will stick to that page. But it's always good to remember the past, like how the trade centers was before, and how not having them now, how different it is. Because I remember we used to watch Friends, I forget what other TV shows, and when Friends used to start, and you would have seen those buildings there, as well as I forgot the BT, I forgot his name, the BT brothers, Sean and Williams, I think. Um, you know who I'm talking about. He played it like in a lot of the scary movie, and they did White Chicks. I think you guys know who I'm talking about. I remember they had a show where they had Pops what played in Friday, and how in the start of the opening of the show, they had the trade centers as well. So it becomes very historic when you every time you see the World Trade Center in some of the movies, or even TV shows, or even animation, because it's like it felt, I don't know why, but it just feels that innocence to see the Twin Towers like very prominent. A lot of things that people talk about, which the only places that I did not go was the Memorial Museum, which I didn't have time for, or go on top of One World Trade Center itself. I didn't have time to do that, but I did record a lot of good things, which I will share in the future with you guys. If you guys are interested, I think it was very important for me to go there today, well, yesterday, because um I felt that it was the right thing to do. um I think I never been this focused on something, because I woke up on the 10th, I went to my college, I went to pick up something, and the first thing I did was like, okay, today's the day. Whatever I needed to take care of, I'm going to take care of it, and then I'm going to go straight there. And I did exactly that, and I want to thank God for giving me the energy and the ability to do that. Because I was kind of getting sleepy, and I was like, yeah, should I try it tomorrow? And then I'm like, no, I'm going to do it today, and thank God I did it. It happened. It was a moment that I really wanted to captivate in my life. I could look at this podcast 4 or 5 years in the future and be like, I thank myself and I thank the Lord that I did this moment, because everything that we have done this year or last year, I pray that people captivate the funnest moments of life. And I would say trying to record some of the non positive things in your life, and see if these things get better in time. Something I've learned how to do is self therapy, where I could record something if I'm feeling some type of way, and I would record that to see if I'm getting better or if I'm getting worse. And from then on, that would determine how I could switch my attitude and what can I approach things differently. Like I said, 9/11 for me did just that. It made me remember things. It made me remember how, another cool thing I wanted to mention is at those times we had like Cartoon Network at its golden peak. So you had Ed and Eddie, Courage the Cowardly Dog, like all these things were broadcasting. I remember they were saying like also the towers antennas. Remember that was when we didn't have all the satellites and all that stuff. We had like basic things like ground internet, ground this, ground that. Remember you used to put like wire in the back of the TV to move the wire just for you to like get internet. You also had at that time, I think, Comcast, and there were not that many other big companies yet, but Comcast and all these other things were there to like give cable and all that stuff. So it's when you reminisce about how 2001 not only shaped the future, and then I remember in 2002, which if you guys want to go check that out, I have that on one of my playlists, like the Super Bowl playlist. Um, U2 did a memorial Super Bowl, and I think out of all the Super Bowls, that was probably the um, most emotional, but at the same time the most important Super Bowl. You know when you have an artist that don't have to say much, but the message, the body language, the song that they picked for the occasion of the event was very fitting of how the mood and how everybody was feeling at that moment. And to see those names go up in this gigantic slide, it was very moving. They did a song called A Street Has No Name, and I think a lot of people just started crying, and it was all these emotions that were sticking out. And the last thing that was on the building when they finished cleaning the site or part of the building was the two gators feet of the World Trade Center. They managed to pick those things up, as well as the on the surrounding of the site. They actually built like a pavilion plaza where you could see them, and then underground you could see the entire museum that surrounds the trade center, the new complex. So looking at the future now, waking up every morning, I could still see the trade centers from where I am when I'm heading to school or work. um, it gives you that sense of okayness to see the building now there, even though it's not fully complete yet because they're still adding more buildings in the site. But like I said, as I get further on into the documentary project that I'm supposed to be releasing soon, you guys will see more of the organic shoots of the experience. And I think that you guys gonna appreciate all that. But yeah, guys, this was an amazing experience for me to be there. I think I'm gonna carry this for the rest of my life that I decided to go there and to pay respect to the families, as well as it felt like the right thing to do at that moment on the 11th, before the 11th, and how, like I said, the world changed on us after September 11th with Bush, signing the Patriot Act, and now everything just went from war to war, you know, since 2021, which 2021 was significant because they also was 20 years, and then from that you had President Biden releasing the troops out of that place since 20 years. So it was a lot. So I just want to thank the families and friends for sticking up with me tonight. I hope you guys appreciate the podcast. This was a special podcast. Like I said, I am very, how would I put this? I am very grateful and humbled to talk about this experience. That's something that I really wanted to do this year. There's a lot of things that I think I wanted to do this year, and I think that was one of those things. That's why you didn't see no music background on there, because I wanted to make this as serious as possible. And I also wanted to spread the love and understanding that even though I didn't have no family member that has passed away on there, I still want to pray and thank the survivors, as well as the first responders that were heroes that day. You don't have to be remembering or forgetting what happened. Some people, that's how they think, like they want to rush to get things over. Like, I think we live in a world now where everything is not sincere or sensified, where people don't give people time to like reminisce or to heal. They just want you to get over things, and I think it's a wrong thing, because you to be human, you need to learn how to connect. You need to learn how to mourn with people, not just flat out trying to get used to things and move forward. You know, so yeah, I want to thank you guys. This was a podcast special, episode 19 and 20. I hope you guys enjoy this wherever you guys are around the world. You guys could always watch this, and I always respond to my um, channel, my comments, and I want to thank you guys for staying up with me. So anybody that didn't see this, this will be replayed so you guys could see it. Hopefully next week I will be back on the podcast to talk about something else. But tonight was something that I really wanted to talk about, because after 9/11 on September 11th, on September 12th, it was like a day of mourning and silentness. That's what I did it on the 12th, because it was the right thing to do at the moment. Everything with me is a caution, is very planned out. I don't just do things out of whim, because I think as designers, as thinkers, we have to be very careful what we put out or display. So thank you guys so much. I truly appreciate this. I will be covering some track and field things after this. So if you guys are interested, you might get all those videos tomorrow. So, but they will be uploaded accordingly after this. So I'll see you guys soon. Thank you guys so much, and God bless you guys. And I hope everyone has a wonderful Monday. Some of us are going to school. Some of us will be starting school. I pray my hand on all of you guys, and I hope God keeps you guys safe. And see you guys. Thank you guys for sticking up with me. I am your host, Sleepy Celestial, and I am signing out. And before we sign out, we're going to be doing one last go. Let's check it out. Uh, where is it right now? Still trying to find it. Hold on, guys. It was a good experience, I think. Um, and another thing, guys, before I go, I know I'm not supposed to be taking too much time, but if they're missing three more buildings on the site, and I think they haven't put they haven't put hold on. They haven't put one of those buildings, Tower 2, which I think they still say they designing it. I would love to see what the other one's gonna look like, but I would say only time will tell. So yeah. So okay, guys. So that I think that's about it. Um, Shout out to all my subscribers. I wanted to say this before I go. Also, um, for anybody that has subscribed to me this year, I just want to say thank you guys so much. It means so much to me to have all those people as my fans and subscribers. Um, I don't ask for much, and I think you guys understand that from the bottom of my heart. You guys have helped me become a better creator, and the way I put out my projects. And thank you guys for being so patient as well, because I am going to school, so there'll be times I can't release too many works, but I will make the best of things, and to create this world that I am creating now, to have all these people in it. It means so much to me. Sometimes they say you lose people or you gain people. I am very satisfied for the people that I have now, because I'm not a person that's searching for a big YouTube claim. I'm doing things because I love it, and it's cool if people that comes in and goes and subscribe. I think that means a lot to me. And my purpose now has shifted. Is to not only help people but to make people feel important, like to be heard. Like that is what the channel is for. That is why the Sleepy Celestial channel exists, because it's a channel that has cluster of belief. Like it has different people on this channel. It's a representation of people, and it's the appreciation of people, and how unity can help us evolve. I think that's what the world needs now, and it needs God's inventions intervene as well, like to show love to the most unconditional ways. I think that's important. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate this moment. Don't think I don't appreciate anything that you guys have helped me with. Some people will leave good comments on there, how to fix the channel. um it means so much. Like I say, I don't take things to heart at all. I always tell people, like, I'm still learning, I'm still young, I'm still learning, and anybody that's willing to help me with things in life and in the right way, I think I will appreciate them so much. Sometimes you need that group of people that could help you come up, and I think I find the right people that subscribe to my channel. So thank you guys so much. I hope that this experience taught us a lot of things, and to help each other even if we have our differences. So love you guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. I am your host again, Sleepy Celestial, and I am signing out. Bye bye.